Morning light spilled through the narrow windows of Rourke's command center, casting long rectangles across the tactical displays and situation boards. The air smelled of synthetic coffee, a poor imitation of Earth's brew, but a comfort nonetheless in these uncertain times. Rourke had been awake for hours, reviewing security footage from the colony's communications hub. If Maya was right about Earth's silence, the evidence would be there. The door chimed, then slid open without waiting for his response. Lieutenant Cattleman entered, his expression grim. Behind him, Major Elliott's weathered face betrayed an unusual level of agitation. "The results are in," Cattleman said without preamble, placing a data tablet on Rourke's desk. "You might want to sit down, sir." Rourke remained standing. "I'm already bracing for bad news, Lieutenant. Just give it to me straight." Cattleman and Elliott exchanged glances. It was Elliott who spoke next, his voice rough with barely contained anger. "You lost, by a landslide. Way won with 62% of the vote." Rourke's brow furrowed. "That doesn't make sense. The polling data was apparently fabricated," Cattleman finished. "Or so they're claiming. According to the election committee, their preliminary data shows widespread support for Captain Way's vision of unity and progress." "Unity and progress," Elliott repeated with a snort. "Fancy words for continued deception." Rourke picked up the tablet, scrolling through the results. The numbers were staggering. Not only had he supposedly lost by a wide margin, but the total vote count exceeded their expectations by nearly 30,000. "This can't be right," he said, focusing on the participation statistics. "According to this, 97% of all colonists voted, including children." "It gets worse," Cattleman said. "We ran a preliminary audit through our systems. Several thousand votes were cast by Odyssey casualties. Dead people, sir." "Voting from beyond the grave," Elliott remarked dryly. "That's a new one, even for me." Rourke set the tablet down with deliberate care, though what he really wanted was to hurl it against the wall. "Have you taken these discrepancies to the election committee?" "Already done," Cattleman confirmed. "They've acknowledged minor irregularities but claimed they wouldn't have affected the overall outcome." "Minor irregularities," Rourke echoed. "That's what they're calling 30,000 fraudulent votes?" "They're pushing for Way's immediate confirmation," Elliott added. "The other colony heads have already endorsed the results. They're moving forward with the inauguration in 2 days." Rourke turned to gaze out the window at Vanguard Colony, his colony. People moved with purpose through the settlement. Engineers maintaining infrastructure, farmers tending crops, security personnel patrolling the completed defensive perimeter. None of them yet knew that their votes had been rendered meaningless. "All politicians are pigs," he said finally, "regardless of the world they're standing on." He turned back to face his officers. "I never wanted the job, but I won't stand by while Way and his conspirators undermine everything we've built." "What's our play, sir?" Elliott asked, clearly ready for action. "We need irrefutable evidence," Rourke replied, "not just of the election fraud, but of the Paradise Protocol deception. The two are connected. They have to be. Way wouldn't risk this level of obvious manipulation unless he was desperate to maintain control of the communications systems." The door chimed again. This time it was Acting Captain Geo Duvall and Dr. Karras. Geo's face was taut with controlled fury, while Karras looked concerned but collected. "You've heard?" Geo said. It wasn't a question. "We've heard," Rourke confirmed, "and we're already planning our response." "I've been analyzing the colony demographics," Karras said, activating her own tablet display. "Something interesting has emerged from the population shifts. Over the past 6 weeks, we've seen a steady migration of Odyssey survivors from Sentinel Colony to Vanguard. Nearly 82% of all Odyssey survivors initially assigned to Sentinel have requested and received transfers." "People vote with their feet when they can't with their ballots," Elliott observed. "Or when they sense something's wrong," Geo added. "My mother had contacts throughout Sentinel, good people who started noticing discrepancies in the official communications logs months ago." Rourke considered this. "The Odyssey survivors know something's off. They're leaving Sentinel because they don't trust Way's leadership, which may explain why Way was so desperate to push through this election result," Karras suggested. He's losing his grip on his own colony. What about the other colonies? Rourke asked. Hope's Calling has seen a 12% outflow to Vanguard, Cattleman reported, consulting his notes. New Dawn, about 8%. Sentinel has the highest transfer rate by far. They know, Rourke realized, maybe not the details, but they sense the deception. They're gravitating toward the one colony leader who isn't part of the Paradise Protocol conspiracy. So what do we do now? Geo asked, his voice tight with the need for action. They've stolen the election. They'll use their new authority to block any investigation into my mother's death or Underwood's claims. Rourke's mind raced through the options. Open confrontation would lead to division among the colonists at a time when unity was essential for survival. Quiet capitulation would allow the deception to continue, potentially endangering everyone if critical decisions were being made based on fabricated directives from an Earth that had fallen silent. There had to be a middle path. We need access to the communications array, he decided. Irrefutable proof that Earth has gone silent. If we can demonstrate that the Paradise Protocol is a fraud, designed to maintain power for a select few, the election fraud becomes secondary. The primary array is on Sentinel's territory, Elliot pointed out. Heavily guarded. But there's the auxiliary array at Hope's Calling, Cattleman suggested. Used primarily for deep space telemetry but capable of accessing the same transmission logs. Less security, too, Geo added. Counselor Ezra values scientific access over military protocol. Rourke nodded slowly. We need a team inside that facility, small, discreet, but capable if things go sideways. I can get us in, Geo offered immediately. As Odyssey's representative, I have formal access to review communications logs regarding our missing personnel. It's thin cover, but it should work for a brief window. I'll go with him, Elliot said. Two-person team, minimal footprint. No, Rourke countered. If this goes wrong, I don't want either of you implicated. This has to be my operation. Your plausible deniability may be our only fallback position. With respect, sir, Geo said firmly, this is about my mother's death as much as it is about the election or Paradise Protocol. I'm going. Rourke studied the young man's determined expression, so reminiscent of Maya's unwavering resolve. Very well. You and I will make the approach. Elliot, you'll coordinate security from here. If we're compromised, you'll need to continue the investigation through other channels. And what about the inauguration, Karras asked. It's in 2 days. Once Wei is officially installed as chief administrator, he'll have authority over all colonial security systems. Then we move tonight, Rourke decided. Cattleman, prepare a secure transport with minimal markings. Karras will need a scientific pretext that would reasonably require my presence at Hope's Calling at this hour. The soil samples I presented to the council, she suggested. I could claim to have found anomalous readings that require immediate consultation with their xenobiology team. Perfect, Rourke agreed. Elliot, establish a secure communication protocol for this operation. Use the old Vanguard military encryption, not the colonial standard. If Wei is monitoring transmissions, I want him blind to our movements. The group dispersed to prepare, leaving Rourke momentarily alone with Geo. The young officer stood at the window, gazing out at the colony with an intensity that suggested he was seeing not the present but some uncertain future. Your mother would be proud, Rourke said quietly. Geo didn't turn. She believed in this colony, in what it could be. She used to say we had a chance to build something better than what we left behind. We still do, Rourke assured him. But first we need the truth. The truth, Geo echoed, finally turning to face him. What if the truth is worse than we imagine? What if Earth isn't just silent but gone? It was the question that had haunted Rourke's thoughts since viewing Maya's recording. If Earth had truly fallen silent, the implications were staggering. These 200,000 colonists might represent the last remnant of humanity. Then we face it together, he said simply. But we face it honestly, not wrapped in comfortable lies. The transport glided silently over the darkened landscape, its running lights dimmed to near invisibility. Hope's Calling colony was a collection of golden lights on the horizon, its boundaries less sharply defined than Vanguard's. Where Rourke had built walls and watchtowers, Counselor Ezra had established gardens and observation decks, different philosophies for an uncertain future. Geo piloted the vehicle with practiced ease, following a flight path that would approach Hope's Calling from the west, away from the direct line to Vanguard and less likely to draw attention. He wore civilian clothing rather than his Odyssey uniform, though his military bearing was impossible to disguise completely. "We're 10 minutes out," he reported. "No sign of aerial patrols." Rourke nodded, checking the secure communicator one last time. "Elliot confirms our approach is clear. Hope's Calling maintains minimal night security. Their focus is on the wildlife, not human threats." "Naive," Geo commented. "Or trusting," Rourke countered. "Not everyone shares our skepticism." "Not everyone watched their mother die under suspicious circumstances," Geo replied, his voice tight. The transport settled onto a landing pad at the western edge of Hope's Calling, near their agricultural research center. A lone technician approached, scanning their identification codes with casual efficiency. "Captain Rourke," she acknowledged with mild surprise. "We weren't expecting Vanguard leadership at this hour." "Urgent consultation with your xenobiology team," Rourke explained, offering the data tablet Karras had prepared. "Dr. Karras's soil samples have shown unusual properties that may affect agricultural planning." The technician glanced at the data, clearly understanding little of it but recognizing Karras's authorization codes. "Of course. The research center is mostly empty at this hour, but the systems are accessible. Do you need an escort?" "We know the way," Rourke assured her. "Thank you." As they walked through Hope's Calling's open-air corridors, Rourke was struck by the contrast with Vanguard. Here, the buildings seemed to emerge organically from the landscape, with abundant vegetation integrated into the architecture. People moved more casually, without the constant security presence that characterized his own colony. "The communications array is housed in the northern complex," Geo murmured, gesturing subtly toward a domed structure that rose above the surrounding buildings. "Secondary access through the research center." They entered the research facility unchallenged, their authorizations clearing each security checkpoint with disquieting ease. Either Hope's Calling systems were dangerously lax, or someone had ensured their access wouldn't be questioned. Rourke suspected the latter, which meant they were walking into something, though whether trap or opportunity remained to be seen. The communications center was dimly lit, with only a skeleton crew monitoring the arrays. A young technician looked up as they entered, recognition flickering across her face. "Captain Rourke," she greeted him, then nodded to Geo. "Captain Duval, the Council didn't inform us you'd be accessing the array tonight." "Last-minute request," Rourke explained smoothly. "We need to review the deep space transmission logs from the past 8 months, specifically all communications with Earth Command." The technician hesitated. "Those logs are restricted. I'll need authorization from Counselor Ezra or Director Phillips." "This authorization should suffice," Geo said, presenting a code cylinder that Rourke hadn't seen before. "From my mother's personal archive. She was granted access to all communication logs as part of the investigation into the Odyssey crash." The technician examined the cylinder, then inserted it into her terminal. After a moment, she nodded. "Recognized and authenticated. Terminal 3 is available for your use. The logs are being compiled now." Rourke and Geo moved to the indicated workstation, positioning themselves so they could monitor the room while accessing the data. The terminal hummed to life, displaying a chronological index of all transmissions between the colony fleet and Earth. "Start from 7 months ago," Rourke instructed quietly. "That's when Maya said the communications stopped." Geo navigated through the system with practiced efficiency, accessing the transmission logs from the specified time frame. The data flowed across the screen, regular updates from Earth Command, responses from the colony fleet, technical exchanges between mission specialists. "Everything looks normal," Geo murmured, his brow furrowed. "Regular transmission patterns, expected content." "Too normal," Rourke observed. "Check the authentication signatures." Geo delved deeper into the system, examining the cryptographic signatures that accompanied each transmission. For several minutes he worked in silence, his fingers moving rapidly across the interface. "There," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "The authentication protocols change exactly 7 months and 12 days ago. Subtle, but distinct. Everything before that point uses the standard Earth command encryption suite. Everything after uses a variant similar enough to pass cursory inspection, but definitely not originating from Earth. They've been fabricating the transmissions," Rourke confirmed, "creating the illusion of continued communication. But look at this," Geo continued, highlighting a series of data points. "There are still outgoing transmissions to Earth, regular updates from the colonies, requests for guidance, technical reports. They're maintaining the charade in both directions." "Keeping up appearances," Rourke mused. "If anyone checked the logs casually, they'd see the expected pattern of communication. But Earth isn't responding, hasn't been for over 7 months. "We need to download this evidence," Geo said, already preparing a data transfer. "Wait," Rourke cautioned, noticing a subtle change in the room's atmosphere. The technician who had greeted them was speaking softly into a communicator, her eyes darting repeatedly in their direction. "We've been made. Finish the download and prepare to move." Geo worked rapidly, copying the critical data segments while Rourke maintained casual surveillance of the room. 4 minutes later, Geo removed a data crystal from the terminal. "Done," he confirmed. "Full evidence package, including authentication discrepancies and transmission patterns." They stood to leave, moving unhurriedly toward the exit. The technician watched them go, her expression carefully neutral. Too neutral. "We're being tracked," Rourke murmured as they stepped into the corridor. "Change of plan. We separate here. You take the evidence back to Vanguard. I'll create a diversion." "Not a chance," Geo replied firmly. "We started this together. We finish it together." Before Rourke could argue, the corridor ahead filled with security personnel, not Hope's Calling's usual green uniformed staff, but black-clad figures bearing Sentinel insignia. "Captain Rourke," called a familiar voice. Captain Wei stepped forward from behind his security team, his expression a mixture of disappointment and triumph. "Trespassing in another colony's secure facilities, accessing restricted communications logs. These are serious violations of colonial law." "We were granted access," Rourke replied evenly, "and found exactly what we were looking for, the truth about Paradise Protocol." Wei's eyes narrowed fractionally, the only indication that the words had struck home. "I don't know what you're talking about, Captain, but I do know that interfering with colonial communications is a serious offense. As Chief Administrator-elect, I'm placing you under arrest pending investigation." "Under whose authority?" Geo demanded. "The election hasn't been certified. You have no jurisdiction here." "Oh, but I do," Wes smiled thinly. "The Council held an emergency session 2 hours ago. My appointment has been expedited in light of security concerns." He gestured to his security team. "Take them both into custody. Carefully. They're valuable colonial assets despite their misguided actions." Rourke assessed their options rapidly. 6 security personnel, all armed in a confined space. Fighting would be futile and would only confirm Wei's narrative of their dangerous behavior. "We go peacefully," he said to Geo, his voice pitched for the younger man's ears alone. "For now. Elliot has contingencies in place." As Wei's security team surrounded them, Rourke locked eyes with the newly appointed chief administrator. "You can't hide the truth forever, Wei. Earth is silent. The Paradise Protocol is a fraud. The people deserve to know." Wei's smile never wavered. "What the people deserve, Captain, is stability, hope, a future unburdened by uncertainty. That's what I intend to provide." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Did you really think Maya Dual was the only one who discovered the truth? The difference is she couldn't accept the necessity of what we've done, what we must continue to do." "And what's that?" Rourke asked, even as restraints were placed on his wrists. "Survive," Wei replied simply, "by any means necessary." As they were led away, Rourke caught Geo's eye. The young officer gave an almost imperceptible nod. Whatever happened next, they both understood the stakes. Maya Duval had died for this truth. Underwood had died for it. And now the future of the colonies, perhaps the future of humanity itself, hung in the balance. Behind them, Hope's calling colony continued its peaceful night, unaware that the foundations of their new world had just shifted irrevocably. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave it a like and to subscribe if you'd like to see more. Feel free to comment and share it as well. With all that said, go on and check out the video in the top left. I think you might like it.